Good morning, Akansha. Thank you for joining this NISC as a flagship event of NASCOM for SMEs, especially curated design for all of us. Here, my friend Abhijit Bhaduri, who is a great expert, management and practitioner with global experience across various sectors. For 7 years, he was the chief learning officer for Wipro. He lived and worked on global talent initiatives across multiple countries. As an alumnus of Microsoft, Pepsi, Colgate, and Tata Steel, he has served and been exposed to globally acknowledged best practices and leadership and culture building. Very, very critical and important for all of us. We know that. Nearly a billion followers on LinkedIn and Twitter. He is famous for short form articles and sketches. LinkedIn told him as a top voice to be followed. And here is the voice for all of us, friends. I would not waste much time. Bring Abhijit on stage and let's kick start the session. Welcome Abhijit on the stage and let's start and get going. Bring the Abhijit, please.
Hello, thank you, Ajay. That was a lovely introduction, and just sets a very high standard for me to live up to. But thank you very, very much for inviting me. I'm deeply grateful to NASCOM to make this happen. So I'm going to today talk to you about my new book, Dreamers and Unicorns. It has just been released, so you're the first people that I'm sharing this with, and this is really in many ways symbolic because in some sense, the SMEs are the dreamer community of the country. So what I want to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what makes dreamers actually grow to become unicorns. And by that, I don't necessarily mean a $1 billion evaluation alone, but when you think about a dreamer is really trying to find three or four things to match. First is, a dreamer needs to find a product market fit. They need to find capital. They need to find the employees. But one of the things that I have discovered in my years of work and the last 4 years as an entrepreneur, I'm also one of the small entrepreneurs like you. And one of the things I've learned is the thing that takes a company from being a dreamer to a unicorn, which means to have national presence, potentially in a few other neighboring countries. That's a unicorn. That really is focused on three different things: leadership, talent, and culture. But of that, what is most important? I'm going to focus on that. Also, more importantly, I would urge you to ask the questions, and I will explain to you the format in which we are going to look at it. Um, Dreamers and unicorns and market shapers are the three stages when a company grows. So when a company becomes, grows from being a dreamer to a unicorn, that's a first stage. And the second stage is where they become market shapers. So, like if you think about it, the companies that we all know are the biggest companies in the world, $1 trillion companies, the Apples, Microsoft, all of that. But then there are also many other companies right across sectors which do that. So these are the market shapers. Um, and they all share some of the things in common, which again is leadership, talent, and culture. So this is what I'm going to talk to. So without further ado, let me just get started with my presentation. I'm going to pause it halfway through. I have about 15 or 16 slides. So somewhere around the midpoint, I'm going to stop and sort of ask for questions. But if you have any questions in between, I'll be delighted and happy to take the questions. And Dr. Data is going to help me, come up with all the questions. So,
Abhijit,
Dr. Data, please feel free.
Abhijit,
Yes.
before you kick start,
Yes.
I had a personal interest in your workshops related to making a choice,
Yes.
and I think this is where during your presentation we will be making a choices, which
Sure.
path to follow, where to go. We have always a choice, right? So before you come to this unicorn and dreamers, we always have a choice which path to follow. So would you like to
Absolutely.
spend 2-3 minutes on the choices, principles you for try to express to audience, and then we go to the presentation. That will be, I think, setting the context and help us select the right path during the presentation.
Sure. Sure. I think, when I'm going to sort of look at choices that the organizations and the entrepreneurs and leaders follow, in my presentation. But today, as a participant, may I sort of request that we have choices, that we can continue to do our emails and keep the phone out there and glance at it. But I can assure you that it would be time well spent if you take notes. If you handwrite your notes, those are the best ways in which your brain actually remembers. So I would urge you to take those notes. I would urge you to stay active, because one of the challenges, Dr. Data, in our education system is that we very often have been conditioned to become passive recipients of information. So in school or college, we sort of take a evaluative mode and say, let me find out if this guy is good or bad, if this teacher knows anything at all or not. um, but when you take an active role, you're actually really trying to figure out, how do I use the information that is coming my way? And then your questions are really about, how would you put that information? So if you do that, that's probably the best choice to make.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
all right, so
Let's get
great.
started then.
Let's get started. I'm going to sort of start with the presentation, and I'm going to show you uh, the first thing. Uh, there you go. Are you able to see the screen? Dr.
Yes,
Data,
we
can
can
you
see.
see
We
this?
can hear you.
Perfect. Okay. All right. That's a little bit about me. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. That's my Twitter handle, and on LinkedIn also you can find me there. Um, I run a weekly newsletter which is called abhijitbhaduri.substack.com, and that's the cover of the book. Everything that I'm going to talk to you about is explained in much greater detail, with loads and loads of Indian examples, beyond the usual, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon. All those are also there, but then there are lots of Indian examples, companies which have grown from really being, dreamers to unicorn stages. We've looked at that. Um, but I want to start by first telling you what is the sum total of what I'm going to share with you today. And that sum total of that sharing is actually written right here at the bottom of the screen, which is, I'm going to talk to you about three things. One is, the takeaway is that your talent pool actually defines your growth. So your ambition, whatever you wish to accomplish, is only dependent on the kind of talent pool that you have. So if I want to win the World Cup in cricket, I cannot think of doing it if my talent pool does not allow me to be world class. Second thing is, how do you build a talent mindset? Which is that, we'll try and really understand, this term talent is used very, very loosely. Sometimes we kind of use the word talent. We are only describing one third of what talent is all about. So the two other pieces, which are the two-third of talent, I'm going to talk to you about that. And the third thing that I'm going to talk to you about is, talent pools are defined by the talent brand, not the talent, not what you pay the people. So this is one of the things, when I consult with many of the smaller organizations, we talk to entrepreneurs. When you tell them that what comes in the way of your getting world-class talent, the first things that people really say is, uh, cannot pay as much as the larger companies. That is absolutely not a valid reason. I will give you examples of smaller companies, and I want to start first with a little bit of an example. I'm going to talk to you about a person that a friend of mine, who said that, you keep using the word dreamers and unicorns. Uh, what are these dreamers and unicorns? I want to talk to you about, just looking at what is there in the news. Last 2 days, these are three things I tweeted about. The first was, Tesla is going to join the Standard and Poor 500 in one fell swoop. Index, it was so large, given the car makers' hefty market capitalization, they were actually debating whether they need to break it down into two groups and do it. But actually, no, this is going to be one of the Standard and Poor 500. So this is certainly a market shaper. But keep in mind, when you see that Tesla is going to become one of the market shapers officially, they are going to join the Standard and Poor 500. Keep in mind that they are going to displace one person. The company which goes off is going to be in the fourth category. We haven't really put that on the screen. They are the incumbents. Now, most incumbents, ironically, are people who have been dreamers who have been unicorns at a point of time. They've been also market shapers at a point of time. But at some point of time, when they stop investing in leadership, talent, and culture, very, very rapidly they will become an incumbent. If you think about companies like I posted a photograph of the ambassador card yesterday. I saw it yesterday in Bangalore, which is where I live and work. A lot of it was the fact that the ambassador car was a part of our landscape when we were growing up. Today, it is an incumbent. It's a has been. Yes, there are some. In Calcutta, you can still see the taxis which are there, and you will see the occasional ambassadors in the government offices. But by and large, it no longer is, there in the mindset of the consumer. One of the things that you will see is the piece that I want you to think about is before a company really starts, disappearing and from the, from being a market shaper or a unicorn, one of the first things to keep in mind is it is actually the people who run the company, the employees. They will be the first ones to actually figure out that the company is no longer able to attract talent. The leaders are usually the last ones to figure that out. And I've seen this time and again. When you talk to many of them, the leaders will say, "Oh, we are a market shaper. We are a unicorn. We are, fast growing." And if you ask them, why is it that you haven't grown in the last 12 months, they will have all kinds of reasons. Or the market is bad, there's recession, the sector is not doing well, this has happened, that has happened. But if you ask the employees, they will tell you the prime reason is we've stopped attracting the top talent for the last whatever time that they've stopped innovating. So I'm going to sort of put that as this central challenge that the small businesses have to address. The second piece is a very interesting dimension of, there's a Netflix serial called The Crown, which is on Netflix. The power of storytelling is so sharp that, people are really saying that the official version is that you have to tell people it is a piece of fiction. It is not a real story of Princess Diana and King, Prince Charles, which is being shown there. It is a work of fiction. Whether that is correct or not, I do not know. But one of the things I want to focus on is the leader's ability to build storytelling is actually determining the kind of money they raise, the kind of talent they attract, and the kind of culture they build. So today we are going to sort of also talk to you a little bit about the power of storytelling in the three brands that people build, which is the leadership brand, the talent brand, and the culture brand. We'll talk about that in greater detail. The other was, Tony Hsieh. He was one of the people who, grew from being a dreamer, became a unicorn, became a market shaper when their company was acquired for $1 billion. That was when he was a unicorn. The brand that he founded called Zappos, he made actually customers as a customer service a way of building his brand. But also, one of the things he did was he made a job like the call center job something really aspirational. He told people, I'm going to pay you to leave the company if you don't think you belong here, but you got to do it in the first couple of days. So he was so obsessed about hiring only people who could really make a difference, who really enjoyed working with the customer. So, he created a lot of things about organization, design, and culture, which is why I've put him as one of the three things. But nevertheless, these three pictures also tell you that anytime you open the newspaper, hopefully after today's conversation, you will start seeing that it is always about a dreamer becoming a unicorn becoming a market shaper, or a market shaper or unicorn becoming an incumbent because they have stopped innovating and investing in leadership, talent, and culture. So let's move on to three reasons why most dreamers will not become unicorns. This is what I want to talk about. Let's ask, people, what do you think could be the three reasons why most dreamers will not become unicorns? I urge you to put your responses in the chat window if you can. And, Dr. Data is going to help me consolidate that. But, put your thing. What could be the three reasons that most dreamers, which is the MSMEs that we are talking about, will not grow big enough to become unicorns. Put your responses there. We'll come back to that. I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to put that, give an example of a, I've been publishing books for a while, and so I work fairly closely with publishers, all kinds, large publishers like the one that I've now, Dreamers and Unicorns is brought out by Westland, which is part of Amazon, so it's a market shaper organization. But also there are other organizations I've worked with, HarperCollins, Rupa, uh, but there are some distinct differences. When you look at the newspaper industry, one of the things people will tell you, publishers, I've been speaking to a bunch of them as part of my consulting work. It's quite interesting. They talk about there's a 50% drop in demand, because of Corona and the pandemic. There's a 50% drop in demand, and which means that the unit costs, if they have to really maintain the unit costs, their margins are really slicing down. And because printing machines are very expensive to keep them going, you need to invest in maintenance. And 27% of the print firms are going to face closure. 27%, one out of four print firms that you see will not survive. So the person, who prints a lot of the stationery that I work with, I try and support other SMEs when I do my work. So he was telling me that I don't know how I'm going to manage, because a lot of the larger firms delay the payments, which is one of the things. Yes, that is a problem, but there's a bigger problem. This is not one of the three reasons why the dreamer will not survive. Second thing that you have to keep in mind is 3,000 print businesses will close by March 2021. This is Indian data. When you ask people why is it happening, they give two or three reasons, both of which are valid, which is that education is going online, and therefore they don't really need the printed books anymore. The second thing that they are talking about is, a lot of the business comes from diaries. These diaries are becoming obsolete. Most people use their phone instead of a diary. And yet, as I said, that most of the times the people who are, in the middle of the business find it very hard to take a look at their own self and evaluate. What I'm going to do in the slides is, something like this, which I'm sharing. I'm going to keep building a consolidated picture, so it'll sort of, all come together. You will see it. One of the first pieces I want to talk about is that the reason why the dreamers do not become unicorns, or the ones which are dying, the three reasons actually are talent, talent, and talent. These are your three reasons. It's not about money. N number of times, when you ask the well-funded businesses, why did you close down? Most of them will say because we didn't have enough funds. And yet, when studies are made, not having enough funds is only the 10th reason. 10th reason. Most of the ones which are about why businesses shut down, it is always about talent. They did not have the right talent and therefore have not been able to actually make an impact in the marketplace. So, in order to understand why this matters, I want to put across a small proposition. Work, worker, and workplaces, it actually works like a cycle. Yeah. So, if you think about it, when human beings started to move from the agricultural setup into the first industrial revolution, the first thing that changed was they needed people who had different set of skills. So as work changed, you need a different kind of a worker. So the people who were workers, who were doing very well on the farm, they had a certain set of skills. They knew how to grow the crops. They knew how to harvest. All those skills became increasingly inefficient and redundant because people were moving in. They were making textiles. They were using steam power. They were working in the factories. So the workplace was the factory. The way they were working was done with steam, and it needed a new set of skills. The moment this balance is changed, one of the people who will get destroyed is that, whoever's doing the wrong thing is going to get destroyed. And that is exactly what is happening in that example that I talked to you about, the small business of printing. The 3,000 people who are getting were going to shut down. And that's a tragedy that we are going to look at. This is also one of the things to keep in mind is that they are probably getting the talent equation wrong. And it's not what they are doing today, but it's a talent equation they have never invested in the past. So, why does it matter today? Because the importance of how talent can change the game is very, very evident. Look at any sport. Who did we mourn the most, in the last week that we are looking at? We mourned the death of Maradona. Maradona was, an amazingly one of the most gifted football players. But at the same time, one of the tragedies that happened with Maradona is that he was unable to handle his success, and had multiple problems with the law. He had challenges with addiction. He had health challenges, and all of that leading to a cardiac arrest, and he died at age 60, disappointing a lot of people. He was a national hero, and yet at the same time, you'll find leadership, talent, and culture being recurring themes that people have to address when it comes to the world of work. All right, so let's look at how this sort of works. That, when you think about how worker, and workplaces, if you look at even in the previous one, when the industry moved from the first industrial revolution to the second industrial revolution, you started to have a scenario where, people would be moving into the new way of working, which is steam was replaced by electricity, which also meant that you needed people with new set of skills. For example, you needed to have shift supervisors, because you are not dependent on starting the factory when the sun goes up, and you didn't have to shut it when the sun goes down. You could work 24 hours. That means there was a new way of working. It needed new skills. So, we talked about mass production. Mass production needed a new set of skills, and it was a very different workplace. But actually, from that time, from the second industrial revolution, technology has changed dramatically. The way we work has changed a lot. The way, when we think about the worker, those definitions have changed. And yet at the same time, our norms about how we work have not changed. Let me give you an example. When I think about, worker, you think about potentially a human being. You also think about the fact that, this is the number of people who are actually going to be, on your roles. Yet at the same time, if you look at the ecosystem has already got many, many different things which are already changing the way you work. Think of the way that you use your phone in order to get to the work, that you're connected with a number of people. But think of the fact that your phone is also being used by your workers to understand a lot of things about what is going on in the world. So you are actually dealing with a very hyper connected worker, and managing a hyper connected worker is very different from working with people who do not have access to information. And this is the whole changing workplace that we are looking at. And by the way, when you think about the term worker, the worker is not just the human being. You're also working with machines, robots. You're working with algorithms. You're working with freelancers. You're working with gig workers. All of that, and I know that you have got sessions to talk about all of these, and you're talking about how to, market to different people. How do you find new consumers? All of that means that the leader also has to pick up new skills, because in most cases in a small organization, the bottleneck for growth is the leader himself or herself. So let's look at some of the changes that have happened, in this worker workplaces. Because of the pandemic, a whole lot of things have once again changed. And when all three have changed, this is the first time in history worker, and workplaces have changed altogether. So some of the quick things to keep in mind, the time of work has become fluid. There is no beginning of the day. There is no end of the work day. We seem to be working 24/7. I certainly know for myself that I think I'm working longer hours than what I did when I was traveling. When I traveled, I would go to different locations. Now, the entire world that I'm doing, my consulting clients are there right across the world, but I don't need to go there. And this is a assumption that has been challenged. How we do the work has also been challenged. Look at the way that you are doing your work today. we always assumed that work from home was not a possibility in many of the cases. Not everything. Manufacturing still has to be done, out there. Pharma companies that I consult with still need to, have their shifts running. So a lot of that is there, but a lot of it has certainly changed. Education has changed. You probably have children who are taking examinations in their school and college. IITs have had their exams. All this is, and worldwide, this is a challenge that people are trying to figure out. Workers have changed. There are new equations that have been formed that people are really beginning to figure out new ways that people who said that we are never, we are like family, they've been let go. So, the trust between the worker and the employer has really been killed. Not even if you are continuing to employ some of the people, the ones you have had to let go are actually building mistrust in the people who you have kept, because they're saying if they could do it for those people, what is to prevent them from doing for me? So the importance of building trust has become a very important part of the new equation. Information and entertainment start to coexist. Now, when you attend hundreds of webinars, that people are offering today, remember that the mobile phone is really right there next to the laptop. And many a times, and I was talking to one of the people who I coach. He's the CEO of a very small setup, pretty much like ours, so he's also one of the SMEs. I coach him. And he was saying that, I was surprised because I do some daily motivational talks. We have a lot of our meetings on Zoom. Then we do our webinars on Zoom. And I was asking, so I was asking him, how how interested are the employees when you call them for this? They said that they are very, very interested. I said, how do you know that? So he said, you can find out. So I spoke to some of the people. One of the kids actually then confessed and told me that I use these headphones. And on the headphones, on Bluetooth, I'm actually connected to my mobile where I'm playing the latest serials on Netflix and Amazon Prime. I'm watching those and I keep my laptop open. So my boss thinks I'm actually listening to the conversation on the laptop. I'm actually listening to the dialogue on my phone, which is playing the latest serial. Also, the third interesting shift that has happened is a lot of the workers have actually learned to be completely autonomous. This is the first time there many of them are working from home with no supervision. And this is also the time you have to learn to trust them because there is no way you can supervise and micromanage them. So the workplace is looking very different. The boundary between home and office has really sort of disappeared. And earlier, the workplaces of all the offices have always had one principle. There's one size fits all, which is that you have one rule, what time you start, you have one way in which one place where everybody gathers, we have common, weekly offs. It's one size fits all. Today, we are in a scenario where one size fits only one person. And therefore, the ability for the businesses to manage this new workplace means that you have to invest very heavily in workplace technology, invest in a human resource person. And this is one of the big weak links that I've seen in many of the dreamers, that they don't invest early enough in human resources because the belief is still an ancient version of HR, which is that, yes, we have somebody who looks after payroll and we have somebody who, hires people. And this is the most elementary aspect of, hiring. You have to understand the value comes from many of the other things. How do you view talent? If you are looking at human resources, you're missing the point. It is really about talent, the skills, and we are going to talk about that. But I think the piece that I want to leave you with is this particular last piece that I want to bring to your notice, which is that intangibles are the ones which are creating value. Okay. Yes, you had a question.
Yes, Abhijit, you asked the questions with the audience, and we have some questions for you.
Perfect. Like,
So,
yeah.
the question which you said was that what is that which people are looking for to make the organizations really unicorn, and they just remain the dreamers, right? This is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
right. So, one Arpit Jain has asked that lack of desire to innovate and change with time. That's one
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. The desire to innovate and grow. Yeah, I think you've got to ask yourself: are you happy? Where you are. Is your vision, for example, somebody mentioned when I started to talk about this. One of the people in NASCOM actually gave a wonderful example, which I want to bring to you. That do you have the vision to form a Starbucks kind of a global chain, or is your dream to have a presence only in one city, or is your dream that you're going to run one small shop? The size of your vision actually determines how heavily you are going to invest in it, and that is really what causes the real growth pattern. The leader sets the vision. If you say that we are going to be a 100 crore company, well, that's what you will be. If you say that I'm going to be a 10,000 crore company, that's what you will be. If you say we are going to be one of the top few in the world to do it, that's what you will be. So the size of your vision determines how much you invest in talent and the culture and the technology. So it's all of that.
Yeah.
Very, very right.
Second is how much important is the place of work for the organizations to succeed?
The place of work is less important than the culture of the workplace, because today the place of work no longer is just the office. We are all doing work to a greater or lesser extent from home, so the workplace is actually it's become irrelevant. But I think the important piece is the kind of policies, the kind of trust, the kind of equation. When you build a great degree of trust, people will go above and beyond. When you build a degree of mistrust, people will figure out how to cheat. So if you tell the students that I'm not going to allow you to cheat, believe me, they will figure out a way to do that. They'll figure out a way to smuggle in the answers. So it's really about building trust.
And if I may replace the place in reference to a city,
Yes.
what is your view?
A city also is a dreamer. A city, when cities grow from being dreamers to unicorns, and cities become market shapers. So if you see the cities which, at one point of time, uh, and this keeps changing, this also keeps changing. A city which is now a dreamer will become a unicorn. A city which is a unicorn will become a market shaper. And it's also true that some of the cities which were, centers of the country's commercial capital at one point of time are no longer relevant places. So those kind of things keep happening to every country, every city. A country which was at the forefront and center. Russia at one point of time was in one of the very prominent players in the world. Then got disintegrated. But all those little places, not everybody became as powerful as Russia. So I think, dreamers, unicorns, and market shapers is a constant process which happens.
Great, Abhijit. So these were the questions which you wanted. So I thought, let me bring them over. Now you can continue your presentation.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate your, sort of doing that. I'm trying to get back to my screen share, and for whatever reason, I'm not able to share my screen. Can you see my screen? Uh, I'm sorry. Can somebody help me with the screen share? Okay. Can you see my screen? Hello. Can you see my screen?
Hi, Abhijit. No, we can't see your screen for some reason.
Okay. I'm going to try it again. I'm sorry. Just can someone help me with this? Is there a way to do that?
Uh, Let me just quickly check with
Shall I log back? Should I?
No. So exactly what you did before, I guess. One sec. Let me just quickly ask someone to come up on stage. Okay. We need.
I am not able to share the screen. I mean, I can continue talking, without
Yeah,
the slide.
hi, Mr. Abhijit. So
Yeah,
down below where the mute and video button is, on the right hand side, there's screen share button, right?
yeah. I'm pressing that, but it doesn't seem to be coming
Uh,
through.
okay.
And should I
One.
press?
Yes, please do it again, please.
No, I'm doing it again. Should I press end and then do that?
If you can just refresh the page once. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I'm going to avoid closing this back. All right. So let me. Sorry, my apologies for the little interruption. I'm so sorry about that. Well, as we said, just a quick recap that we talked about. While organizations, when you look at it, we talk about that. There are enough number of scenarios where the smaller organizations are finding the current setting a bit of a challenge. But as we have seen, that one of the reasons why the challenge happens is that worker and workplaces always have to be in sync. If one of them is missing, then it creates a problem. So when this is a time when worker and workplaces has all changed, and so one of the pieces I want you to think about is that COVID-19 has not driven any major changes. It has just accelerated. So it is not a change maker, it is an accelerant. It's really like somebody has stepped on the accelerator while the digital transformation was happening, and it is really fast forwarded a lot of the companies which are really, if you think about who's a market shaper, these are also the companies which have grown. But it is not necessarily only the global companies have grown. Even in India, if you think about a company like VMart, VMart is a company which has grown dramatically during the time of the pandemic. And there was this whole question: if the workplace is a different city, does it impact growth? The answer is no, it doesn't, because VMart operates in tier 3, tier 4 cities, and even within that, where there has been a pandemic, these people seem to have grown. Yes, it's not necessarily at the same rate of growth, but it is nevertheless a reasonably attractive rate of growth. So it's always possible to do that.
Abhijit, can I take a pause from you?
Yes, sir.
So I will give some questions to the audience, or you may actually give some questions to the audience so that we can capture the answers. By the time you can just log in and log out, and then you start your presentation, because you have another half and a half presentation is left,
Yes, yes.
right? So
Yeah.
why don't you give the questions to the audience by the time we capture them on the chat, and you
Yeah.
just follow the process again to join in.
Sure, sure. So I want to actually, the question I want to ask for you is, what is the role of the leader in being able to attract talent? And what are some of the most innovative things a small, player, an SME can do, which is not necessarily about paying the most in the market, but beyond that, what are some of the things that you do to retain people who are going to make you world class? Not just loyalty, don't say loyalty, that's not the response. What do you do to build your talent to stay world class, and what do you do to make sure you stay world class? So that's my question to you. I'll come right back and join you back.
Yeah.
I'm going to log back.
Sorry for this, Abhijit. Please join back. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. So, guys, here is the opportunity for all of us, and it's a lucky time, if I must say. We have a speaker who has given us a minute to think and ponder upon what we really expect out of him, and make this morning session is some take home value for all of us, and we can implement tomorrow in our companies. And talent is obviously a very, very important task. So, here is a minute for us to write down your questions in chat. I will just take them to Abhijit and capture them all together, and see that how we can really get the talent, capture them, attract them, retain them, what are the things required, and some tips for all of us we might get from him, which could be very, very worthy for all of us. We all know it that the team make the companies, not the walls and the offices, as we all know. And this is where we need to really be thinking about how the talent is retained. And Abhijit is here back with us. So Abhijit, please try your luck to share your presentation. I
Of
hope
course.
technology works.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of really do that
Yeah,
once
please.
again. Okay, I'm going to share the presentation.
Looks like steps are working.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So we are back. Um, I'm going to, move on to
I can't see
three.
your screen till.
Oh, really? Okay. Let me.
Yes, now, Abhijit.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, I can. So please go ahead, Abhijit.
All right. Okay.
All is yours.
So,
Please go ahead. Thank you.
so there are, so how do we address it? One of the things is that there are three brands that people need to build. These three brands actually will be um, your talent uh, brand, your leadership brand, and your culture brand. But I want to first start with a small story um, and a question. If a person, you're trying to attract, let's imagine that these are the two companies. There's Pepsi on the left, which is, a place I worked. Pepsi is on the left, and you have Haldiram on the right. Um, where are people going to join, assuming that they don't know anything about either one of them? Which one? And the answer to that, I'm going to tell you a little story that, some time back when I worked with Pepsi, I had gone to recruit people at a campus. And one of the things that I was trying to tell them was that, how well do you know what what you want to do in your career? And I asked them exactly this question that, you had a choice between Lay's, Pepsi food and Haldiram. Which one do you think, is a bigger player? Which one has more officers? Which one has more employees and all that? And it's funny, almost universally, they all gave the wrong answer. And they all voted, of course, in favor of Pepsi, saying that we would like to join this, we would like to do that. And if you ask them, how much does Haldiram's pay? How much does Pepsi pay? How many factories do they have? They know nothing about either of them. But when they know nothing about either of them, the bigger brand wins. Now, this is one of the first pieces I want you to think about is that we believe that so it is not about the advertisements. Both of them advertise the products, but what makes the company attractive to people to come and work is the fact that Pepsi has a much stronger leadership brand, it has a much stronger talent brand, it has a much stronger culture brand. Now, Haldirams may also be doing a lot of innovative things. But the point is, if people do not know who is the person who leads it, what is the person's vision, what kind of people are there, who are some of the people who work there, nothing is known about them. And if you don't know what is the culture of working there like, what's it going to feel like, then in which case you are missing all the three opportunities by which talent gets attracted to go and work in a place. And this is very important because think about it like this: when when you look at and this is a lot of people would say this is people's preference to work in an MNC versus Indian company. Actually, I don't believe that at all. Let me give you an example. Historically, when you go to the campuses, there's one company which I'm going to start with my own example. I used to work for a company called Aisher Goodert was the company I joined from campus. They paid the least amount of money, but their reputation on campus was phenomenal. Everybody said it doesn't matter what they pay, you have to join them. And I did. This is despite the fact that I could have gotten almost 1.5 to 2x more by working in any of the other places where I also had a choice because I got an offer from them. But I chose to join the place because it was famous for three things: the leadership of, at that point of time, Mr. Vikram Lal, The talent was phenomenal because everybody knew all the people who were there, the people who were stalwarts in my profession. They were all there. We had read about them. They used to write regularly. They used to come and teach on the campus. We all wanted to be like them. So that was the talent brand. And the third was the culture. Everybody talked about the fact that this is a place which invests in your growing. And that is what made me join them. On a more recent basis, even last year, or if you go down to the campus now, a company like Asian Paints still competes at par with the global big brands at a campus, whether it's an engineering campus or at a undergraduate campus or at a business school. Asian Paints actually still does it. It's exactly those three things: leadership brand, talent brand, and culture brand. So the ability for people to discover what you are like, you know leadership brand is built on what you represent. You are the face of the leadership brand. This is what people look at you. So when you go and teach at a campus, people begin to understand that you are the kind of person who's setting the vision. And if you tell them, I'm going to run the small shop, it's not going to be attractive because it will, at any given point of time, there'll be a limitation on how many people you can hire. The top people only want to go to a place which is going to grow. But then again, you can't grow if you don't attract the best people. So your second brand, which is your talent brand, is made possible by the employees that you have. Where you have people, imagine on one particular day, you can't go to the campus to teach, but you can also, some of your senior leaders can go and talk, and they're equally, impressive. And the people say, well, okay, the CEO or the founder is not there today, but anybody from that place seems to be a really bright person. And this is one of the principles I learned when I first started to work, again in an Indian company, which was an advertising agency called Mudra. It was at that point of time, Mudra did not pay the biggest amount of salaries, and yet, Mudra was known for the kind of talent in advertising. You just had to go to a campus and put up the pictures of the people who worked at Mudra. Say for it doesn't matter which branch you get posted in. In each place, you have such stalwarts who were some of the biggest names in the industry, and their work was known and admired by everybody. So the talent brand of the company was absolutely phenomenal. So Mudra, also at that point of time, the vision of the founder CEO, Mr. A.G. Krishnamurthy, was that he said we need to build not just a place for ourselves, but also you have to build it such that we solve the challenge of talent not just for ourselves but for the industry. So Mica as a B school was set up, at that point of time, and Mica became the place where the best of students came in. The best of students got picked up. They made their name, and therefore the talent brand of Mudra also grew side by side. So investing in a brand for leadership and talent is very, very critical if you really want to grow. The third piece that I want to talk to you about is, if you're investing in the leadership brand and the talent brand, what is the point of all of them run away? Because you send somebody, you train them, and the person runs away. What is the point investing in that? The answer is this. So, let me give you a small example of how, we built the culture at places, and I'm going to just pick a random example. you know when I was at uh, when I was at Mudra, at that point of time, every year during Diwali, we used to give people some kind of a gift. And we said that, how do we make a gift meaningful? Because so the model was that the gift would be kept stacked, it would be packed, it would be kept in the office, and people would come there, sign their name, pick up the gift packet, and go away. We never ever heard anybody, any of our employees, ever come back and thank us. Never. That particular year, we said, how do we create meaning in the gift? So one of the things we did was that, and it meant a little bit of work, of course. What we did was, we created a gift for the parent, not the employee. And what it was, we used to work with a very well-known silk sari provider, and we, got a very good rate, and we purchased the best-looking saris in the mudra colors, which was white and red. Yeah, so red border, white colored sari, and we did that. And what we did was for each person, we sent it not to the employee, but we sent it to the employee's parents. Or we sent it, in case the person didn't have parents, we sent it to their siblings, brother, sister. If that was also not there, we sent it to the spouse. So at that point of time, of course, bulk of the people were male. So therefore, I'm giving the example of the sari. But there was a similar thing done for the women employees. And it was phenomenal. The response that we got from the people was that almost 80-90% of the employees' parents wrote back to us saying, I cannot believe that a company does this. And it was like, very heartfelt thanks. And it just made a huge difference. And by the way, we at that point of time invested very heavily in training the employees. So when we started to do that, at that point of time, the MacBook was really aspirational, and we loaded it with the most expensive software that was involved in design and production and all that stuff. So the whole thing was, the people said, "What's the point doing this? Because these fellows are going to learn on the MacBook with us, then they will go and work with the competition." So my view was, if the person believes that this is the last investment, yeah, so investing in talent has two kinds of impact. One is, you do an annual program for one day, you send them for a certification. Guaranteed, as soon as the certification is over, the guy will go back and encash it, because this is the peak value of the certificate. Imagine it's like a share. You know that the share is not going to grow anymore. This is it. हो गया जो होना था इस साल हो गया है. And in which case, that person is going to certainly, after taking the certification, is going to quit and go elsewhere and encash it. But if this person continues to have that investment in themselves, upskills, the talent brand is getting stronger and stronger, their resume is getting stronger and stronger. Keep one thing in mind: the stronger the resume, the more insecure the talent is going to be to go and work for a competitor. If your culture is fantastic, they cannot go and leave you, because their big worry will be, yes, I can get a little bit more money, but nobody will treat me. I will never have as much fun as I have in this place. So you attract talent because you are the leadership brand. You are the reason. If Sachin forms a cricket coaching class, Sachin Tendulkar, guaranteed people will be willing to pay anything to be there. So the leadership brand is all about, are you the visible brand? Do people aspire to be like you? All these places, Steve Jobs was the leadership brand. As Jeff Bezos is the leadership brand, but don't even go that far. In your company, you are the leadership brand. The quality of people you attract is a reflection of how they see you. And the quality of the people that you attract, if you don't groom them and if you don't invest in growing their skills, your talent brand is going to be average. So attracting is not good enough. You have to develop them. And once you develop them, it is your culture which retains them. Yeah. So that is the three things that you have to invest in. So how do you do that? Let's start first with, one of the pieces to think about is, look at the top next to the Haldiram Bhujia packet. You can see two kinds of curves there. One is the rate of growth over time. These are the S curves. When you have an S curve, what it means is, when you start at the earliest part of the S curve, you are pretty much like, you're like the dreamer. Can you see the arrow here at the initial portion? You're like the dreamer here. And then you hit the growth curve. As you hit the growth curve, you are the unicorn. And then you become a market shaper, but also immediately after market shaper, there's nothing. Then you become an incumbent and die. So this is the example of, this is where the ambassador car is today. Yeah, because many other players have come in. So the time when you are really growing is also the time you need to invest in jumping the S curve and going to the next S curve. If you don't do that, your growth at that point of time will also be very low. In the new idea, you will invest in that. But this is exactly how you will grow and keep the thing alive. So all the things, and I'm giving the example of a company like Amazon or something, not because it's $1 trillion company, but the fact is, the example is that they are going to enter into every other industry. Now think about it. Back to this example of the education going online. Already, Amazon has just last week entered into healthcare, uh, and the day they enter into healthcare, the established companies like Pfizer and all that, even though they are all creating the new drug, the COVID vaccine, etc., the pharmaceutical industry's market capitalization overall has dropped. That is the power of the brand, the terror that, if that a company like that goes in, they will eat up everything else. So the important piece is that you have to grow and keep growing in multiple different places. So they didn't stop at selling books. They went into every other piece. They went into retail. Now from retail, they moved into e-commerce. E-commerce, they've shifted. Now they're getting into payments. They've moved into entertainment with Amazon Prime. Now they're moving into healthcare. It's only a question of time. This is my prediction, guys, that they will go into education before another 1 or 2 years. They'll acquire a new company in education and they will go online in education. So this is what I want to give the example for the leader's vision. The leader's vision is that you have to have a vision which people trust. So don't just say that we are going to be the biggest player in the world. People don't trust that. If what you say, you are backing it up with your action, people trust you. And so to be able to understand your customer, my biggest tip is understand your employees first, because they are the ones who are mixing with the customer. They know what is going on. They know where your product is not meeting the need. So instead of yelling at them, invest in them so that they become really good. Um, I want to give you a quick example of a small company that I work with. I've spoken at their conferences. These are the people who do celebrity photography. There are people who do photography at a lot of the well-known film stars' photo shoots that you've seen. These are the people who do it. They have 30. They have 30 photographers. Each one is really good, by the way. Um, and the way they work is, they do wedding photography. So typically, what happens is when any of these big names they invite them, they say that we are only going to work with the founder of that because he's the biggest brand name. Yeah. So he's the biggest brand name. He's the CEO. Everybody wants him to do the photography. What does he say? He says, I have a very simple test. I have my pictures and everybody, all the 30 people whose pictures they've taken, we put them, we give one photograph from each, their best. We put them in an album and we say, if you can make out which one is my photograph, then in which case I will come. Whoever's photo you pick, from that album is the guy who will do the photography. So if it is my photograph, I will come there. And inevitably, the people are surprised that the people that they have picked, the photographs they have liked the best, sometimes don't belong to this guy who is the most famous photographer of them all. It belongs to some management trainee, some young trainee who's just joined them 6 months back. So they invest so heavily in their talent brand that people cannot make out the difference in the work between the top guy and the next guy, which also means that the leader must be so secure that they do not feel worried about this person becoming so good. And how do they build their culture? At a time when everybody has had to lay off, they said, we will do a pay cut, we will not lay off anyone. And they have kept each of these 30 guys because they say these are the 30 best photographers in the business. I cannot let them go and have somebody else start, because when the business comes back, these people know that you have stood by them. They will never leave you, because they know that you've stood by them. They will stand by you. So that is really the most important element that I want to talk about. So guys, this is just really a summary of all the things, and I want to focus now on the dreamers part of it. Um, One of the biggest problems of dreamers is that they do not know how to build organizations. So dreamers or SMEs, what is the biggest challenge? They know how to build products. They know how to build services. They're very, very good at that. Nobody can beat them. But you know what? They do not know how to build an organization. Without building an organization, you cannot grow from being a dreamer to a unicorn. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Because SMEs never ever invest in coaching and skill building. Why do you need to do that? because you need to have a coach who can give you brutally honest feedback, and that is what will help you grow. You don't need a person, because your people around, they will never be able to identify what is it that you need to do better. And if you make a mistake, they're probably going to be too scared to tell you. So you will never grow. If you don't grow, the employees will not grow. If your employees don't grow, your culture will not grow, and you will never attract the best talent. So I want to first start by giving an example of what is talent. Okay. And I want you to sort of look at these three circles that I've got marked here, right here. So if you just sort of see that, these three circles, one is you first evaluate the person's ability to learn. Um, and I'm going to start first by saying that talent is never distributed uniformly. Talent is not distributed uniformly. Yes, I might be a good singer, but I'm never going to have the talent of the caliber of, let's say, Rafi Saab or Kishore or Arjit Singh or any of these people. I'm not going to be that good. So, therefore, talent is not uniform. So, it is a myth when people say great talent didn't get the opportunity. No, 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 no. We are missing the point. Talent, if you look at that, Maradona, we started by talking about that. Maradona was actually born in the slums. He grew up, he was driven. He was driven by his ability to, learn new things. So he continuously improved his game, and he had the ambition to be a world class player. The third element of talent is that you know how to build relationships. If working with you is not fun, you will annoy everybody so much that you will never ever have people who want to work with you. So learning, being being able to manage relationships, and having the right ambition. Ambition means what? That when the best of people, and I've seen this, I do a lot of work with some of the biggest names in Bollywood. One of the things that which always amazes me, these guys who need to do the least because they're already so famous, they're already at the top of their profession, they're the ones who work hardest. Gulzar Saab at his age writes non-stop every single day. So the ability to have that ambition that I'm not, you don't stop because you've reached the top. You continue to redefine. So that is ambition. You continue to learn new things. That's your learning ability, which is this first piece that we talked about. And you have the ability to think of how you will build relationships with others. You are other centric. Yeah. So the thing to sort of really look at is every Olympic star, every Olympic gold medal winner has a coach. Why don't, how many people do you know in the SME circle who have a leadership coach for themselves? If they don't, how are they ever going to play in the Olympics? So to have that growth in talent, to have an exponential growth in talent, you need to be able to invest in really wonderful people who can run your talent strategy. But more importantly, as a beginning point, you have to have a coach who can work with you, because a peer is not, they may be able to tell you about business, but they cannot tell you about your leadership style. So to be able to work with a coach and a mentor is a vital investment that you make. And we also saw that great brand is built on great culture. So how does the talent brand get built on great culture? Ask yourself, does your culture attract, retain, and grow the people that you need so that you can become a unicorn? So eventually it is, think about talent, think about culture as the soil in which you grow things. The soil in which you can grow a cactus plant is not the same soil in which a palm tree or a coconut tree will grow. It is not the same soil in which, grass will grow. So the kind of soil in which your people work, the work environment, the leadership, talent, and culture combination, that is really where you decide whether you will go to become a dreamer or a unicorn. I'm going to take a quick break here, and then I'm going to just sort of leave three things that I'm happy to take questions in. So, what are the main things you should be doing? So, what is it that you should be doing? One is, first thing, assess and evaluate your leadership team. Whoever, succession planning is one of the pieces that determines how much of life your organization will have. Succession planning is a challenge for a lot of the SMEs, because you may want to keep it within the family, but keep in mind, uh, uh, it does not, unless you invest in grooming the uh, your family members, they are not necessarily going to be able to grow your business. Even though they are part of the family, they don't necessarily have the same ambition. And we've seen number of times when the most famous parents, when their children have entered the profession, they have not been that successful, whether it is, doctors, engineers, lawyers, or film stars, cricketers, any of them. You can take any field. You will discover that skill in doing that is not necessarily passed on genetically. Yeah. So create a succession plan and get a coach to help you with that. The third and probably underrated piece in digital transformation is invest in the technology. Because, if your people are, ask yourself, if nobody could ever go and work with each other, would they still be able to get as much and grow? In this pandemic, the piece to think in mind is the only people who've really been able to grow disproportionately are the ones with companies which are fully digital and who are able to operate in a remote environment. So the important piece to keep in mind is, as I said, I said I'm going to talk about three things. Keep in mind your talent pool defines your growth. You build a talent mindset and get over this myth that talent pools are defined by they are defined by your talent brand. It is not the pay that matters, it is the talent brand which attracts people. So that's the end of my presentation, guys. I'm happy to raring to go with all the questions. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and come back to take your questions. So if you have questions, let's go with that.
Thank you, Abhijit, for wonderful presentation. So much. I'm glad that we did this reconnect and brought the screens over. So much of information which we could see and treat to our eyes. Fantastic. Thank you very much for sparing this wonderful 1 hour packed information for all of us. Lot of things, at least for me, to take back home. Thank you very much.
That's so kind of you to say, Ajay. Thank you very
and
much.
I just followed you on Twitter, so I
Thank you.
have one more follower. And I
Thank
would
you.
encourage everybody to follow. So you see the timeline. This is fantastic, which you can be connected to and get some information. So there are 2-3 questions which are coming in here. One is very simple. Rama Murthy is saying that I think the emotional intelligence is more effective and attractive than the paycheck. What's your take on this?
I fully agree. The ability, well, I suppose I'm going to sort of build it by balancing it out. Uh, so the paycheck is never the reason why people join. I've given you my own example, and I'm sure, the people who've joined you, any one of them can actually get a higher, pay somewhere else. The reason why people stay is that they really relate to you. So relationship building and investing. Um, I'm going to sort of add the investing and growing the talent as a very important piece. They may be very loyal to you because they have a wonderful working equation. But think about it, if the person is not able to grow, your business is not going to grow, no matter how loyal the people are. And sometimes the loyalty in the Indian context, in my book, I have talked about one of the challenges is that entrepreneurs, one of the big things is they focus only on loyalty, not on skill. As a result, they are unable to get rid of the person who's not contributing. And in fact, if anything at all, they are taking the company down. But they say, I can't sort of get rid of this person because he's been with me or she has been with me from the time that I started. So they are forced to carry the people along, even though they are no longer value adding to the growth of the organization. So that is a you know real limitation why most Indian organizations, and it's as true, by the way, not just SMEs, but also if you look at many of the large business families, if you go back 40, 50 years, after independence, you just look at that list of families, and you can do this later in your head. Just write down the names of families which were at the top, at that point of time. How many of them survive today, and how many of them have grown? The answer will be evident. And one of the problems is whether it is an organization, whether it's a business family, whether it is this, you have to have succession planning, because an organization, whether it's a religious party or a political party or a business organization, if you don't do a succession planning, the organization will collapse. You cannot get past that. This is the law of organizations. You have to have that. And talent is the least understood part of the businesses, because most people understand finance. They know how to raise money. They understand how to build their product. They know how to go to market. But if you do not understand the talent part of it, the back end is not going to go. It just cannot. So that's why organizations grow to a certain extent and then collapse.
Yeah, Abhijit, and probably unknowingly, you also advise the political parties for have a succession planning, right? No pun intended here, but that's the message which has gone very good, and actually it's very very important. Another question comes from Arpit Jain: how to balance between hire for the future versus hire for right now, and if not take a place further, latter being so difficult.
Wonderful question, Arpit. Thank you so much. Um, I think, the first, one of the things that I always sort of like to do with a business to answer this question is to really say that when you do your business plan, whatever that might be, one of the ways to sort of really do it is, and I'll give you a first-hand example. When I joined Wipro, one of the first questions was, I did not join Wipro as a training and development head of training and development. I joined as a chief learning officer. So, what is the role of a chief learning officer? So, I would talk about three things. I would say the chief learning officer's role is to understand how is the economy going to go. How is the business going to grow in the next 18 to 24 months? So one, you begin to understand what are the factors that are going to shape. For example, if you are going to grow based on acquisitions, then you need a certain kind of talent, then you need a certain set of skills, etc. So, in that sense, so what's going to happen in the business in 18 to 24 months? Second piece to therefore think about is, what are the skills and knowledge base that you will need to have, whether it's domain knowledge, technical knowledge, or soft skills. Uh, how will that get developed? So what are the ones we will need? And third is, what is the most creative way to build those skills in people? It's not just classroom training, but there are multiple ways in which we can do it. Through is specifically, how do you create career paths, and the role sort of expands such that the person expands the role. One of the ways to look at it is when you go to a gym and you see somebody lifting 80 kgs on day one. You don't start by lifting 80 kgs. You will die and you'll, hurt yourself. You start by lifting 5 kgs. That's fine. After your body gets warmed up and you can lift five, one day your coach can tell you that you are now ready to lift 15. Talking of 15, I want to just, there was a question I just saw on the screen, that how to find the right coach. And I'm going to give you a good example of that. One of the, so I've been working with a physical fitness coach for the last 8 years. And, a lot of people at the gym told me that, so he sort of does all these same things. You do weights, then you do crunches, then you do push-ups. Now you know what he's going to tell you, so why do you keep this guy there, even though you know what he's going to tell you? My answer is that the role of the coach is not for the first 15 crunches that I do, which is when I start to do the crunch, and I'm talking about when we started, um, he would ask me, how many crunches can you do? And I would pick a number which I knew would be safe. So I would say, okay, 15 crunches I can do, even though I thought I could do 16, 17. He would say, he said, okay, all right, let's do 15. When I was at the 15th, he would say, let's do five more. And I would say, no, I can't do five more. My back is hurting, this, that. And, he would sort of really encourage me and keep pushing. Okay, one more, one more, one more. I would end up doing 20, 21. So I would always tell the people, I don't pay him for the first 15. The first 15 I can do by myself. I pay him for only five. Those five are very difficult for me to do. And so he builds the skill in me, he builds the motivation in me, he advises me on the diet, and therefore I need the coach, not for the first 15, but for the last five.
Absolutely. And And this is so true. So, if I may add a little bit, Abhijit, since you are here in front of us and you answered how to find the right coach and what is the value, how can people really contact you and get your advices on a professional basis if later? And can be the engagement with you to make a difference in company's life? That may sound a little bit related to your business, but I think this could be a very important thing for all of us to take back home.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my email address right here on the screen. So, I'm going to put that.
On the chat.
Yeah, I'm going to put it on the chat.
Yeah,
So,
great.
all right. I don't know if you can see it. Can you
Yeah,
see
yeah, we can
my
see that. We can see that.
Abhijit Bhaduri at live.com? That's
Yeah.
easy one. Otherwise, if you forget that, I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. I am very active on LinkedIn. I'm very active on Twitter. So, on LinkedIn, let me just again put my uh, linkedin.com.
So, Abhijit, when you do it, how about answering a question which is little deeper in a sense? How to balance knowledge economy and human economy?
Perfect. Great question. I think one of the things that this post-pandemic world, and I'm really talking about, if you remember, I said the COVID. What COVID has done is it has accelerated the trends which were already there. These trends may have been very minor. For example, people did have online classes earlier, but the extent to which the whole world now has to go online to learn, this has never happened before. Yeah. So if you think about it, again, going back to the work worker workplace combination, the challenge is that when you go to that work worker workplace combination without actually building the skill of the teacher to be able to learn on to teach online, what people are doing is they're taking the same content, they're putting it online by teaching to a camera. It is not engaging at all because the method of doing that is probably different. The time that you need to do is different. So for example, when I work with my clients in today's environment, I'm not necessarily traveling to any of the place. So what I do is I work with them on WhatsApp, I work with them on Zoom, I work with them on a telephone, sort of being able to have that. And then we create little pieces and projects that the people need to work on with themselves. There are assessments that the people do. So there are multiple ways that you have to create, because every day if I call you and give you a lecture for like 8 hours a day, it's not going to be good for you, it's not going to be good for me. So the method of worker and workplace has to change together. So if you don't do that, and this is the really I kind of one of the things I really feel very passionately about, the growth of India is not going to come from the large players. They will grow at their own pace and their growth is going to be outside of India. India is going to grow with people like you and me. If you and me do not invest in talent, if we do not invest in the leadership brand and the talent brand and the culture brand altogether, so do read the book. There are hundreds of examples, there are hundreds of practical pieces that you can do. There are exercises, you don't need me to do it. You can try it out yourself. You have the book, you have the response, you have the trigger. For example, one of the things I'll just pull out something which I remembered just now. Just go back, get your leadership team together and say, suppose we were not there, whatever your leadership team is, whether it's 2 people, whether it's 4 people or 20 people, whatever that number is, tell them that if for 7 days we got caught in a mountaintop, we go mountaineering and we are caught in a landslide, we cannot communicate, we cannot come back, and your organization has to run by itself. And this is also the time you discover, on the second day, you get the largest order you've ever done in your life. Would you be able to run the place? If the answer is no, then please go back and fix it, because this is your wake up call. So you have to learn to do it. There are 5 shifts that I talk about in the business. So please read that. And the first shift is that your business should be fully digital, fully remote, because without that you will not be able to grow.
Absolutely. I am glad you used some very fantastic words for all of us. And you are addressing an SME. You can imagine that we are not very large, mostly self funded, mostly bootstrapped, and
You
mostly.
are like me. You are like me. I am even smaller than an SME. I'm a tiny place. I have only 6 employees.
So there are two questions which I'm going to read out for you, and then I have two questions which I have in my mind for general audience. Over the course, Jinal Shah has asked this. Over the
Yes,
course of 20th century, the mature economies of the world evolved from being industrial economies to knowledge economies. Now we are at the another moment, transitioning to human economies, and the shift has profound implications for management. How to balance and shift correctly?
fantastic question. I think that what this the COVID scenario, what it has accelerated is that it has proved to us time and again that it is not it's not about technology. It's really about putting the human being at the center. And by that I don't you know in the previous scenarios we have put we have done a lot of things. If you say that, okay, this is technology to address the customer, I mean, I don't think anybody hesitates to make that investment, whatever it takes. So you say that, okay, I'll put that CRM system, I'll put that tally, I'll do my accounting because it helps me to sort of do that. You ask people, what system do your employees work on? The answer is something really pathetic and really bad. You haven't invested in that. Therefore, working out there is not a pleasurable experience because people, process, and technology are the three things that determine the experience of work. It's really like saying, imagine I take your present laptop or computer and I replace it with a laptop or computer which was the best in 1987, the best laptop at that point of time. How many of you would want to make that? And would you enjoy working on that? Or worse still, in some cases, you are replacing it with a typewriter. If you have not invested in any technology, then you're working with a typewriter. How will you ever compete with people who are really, you are competing with the people who have everything out there. Think of, ask. So if you have younger employees, one of the practical pieces of advice I can give you is, one of the things you should do is take the people who are the most digitally savvy, people who post their pictures online, this, that. Maybe it's your kid, maybe it's your employee. Ask them to teach you and ask them to work with you to create a way in which it can become. And then of course you must take professional help because you're going to make an investment. It can't just be based on what they like. But for the workplace, how do you create? Then there are lots and lots. Please do not invest in some large clunky ERP software. That's not meant for us. It's not meant for us. You and me need to work on a system which is a SaaS system which can work on the mobile. You can implement within a few weeks. As you grow, the business will grow and you can pay as you go. So you are really looking at as a one-off kind of a thing. Somebody who expects you to invest for 10 crores in the internal working system is not the solution for us. We need to work with somebody who is like us, who thinks like us, who works with people like us.
Yeah, I think somebody has said that you cannot buy a comfortable sofa which becomes the thorn for you sometime later and starts
100%.
pinching you yourself, right? So
100%. 100%.
you obviously this is great. So here is my question, Abhijit, to you. How important for you? And this question I also get many times when I'm talking to the startups and smaller companies. How important is for companies to train and retrain the people, and then there is a fear of people leaving you, and that
Yeah.
investment in that team really is a question which you have done. So how important is the training, and how do you just then structure the retaining them there for the company?
Yeah, and as I said, that basic idea is that you have to invest in the leadership, talent, and culture. Leadership actually sets the vision. Talent is when you are really investing in growing their skills. In terms of the culture, there are multiple things to sort of keep in mind, and culture is as much of a challenge for a Fortune 500 company as it is for an SME. I will give you an example, and you can be innovative. and most of the times, culture building does not require any, some deep investment or anything of that sort. It's really about teaching the people with dignity and respect. But more than that, really beginning to address the human element. Let me give you a quick real time example from my time at Pepsi. I have given a lot of examples from smaller companies. I'm also going to give you an example from Pepsi, which I think has a fantastic talent brand. So we were sort of running the sales recognition program at the once a sales meet where you invite the people from different regions. So this was done in different regions. So we were doing the one for the southern region first, and then something else, north, south, east, west. We would do that. So pretty interesting thing that we sort of somebody suggested that why don't we instead of so the typical model was we would give them a cash prize, and sort of do that. And at one point of time, we decided that we are going to, give the people, an opportunity to bring the one member of the family. They could choose whoever they wanted to bring to the event. So most of them decided that they are going to actually get not one, but sometimes they put their money and sort of got both parents. Somebody got their wife and kids. Somebody got their so people did different things. The catch was when the prizes were announced, we did not call the employee on stage. We actually called the parent on stage, and we said we want to give you say thanks to you, and it was just thanks, by the way, because we had spent the money in that airfare. So it was just plain thanks, and followed by a dinner, of course. But we said we want to thank you for the fact that somebody from your family, your kid, your wife, your kid, whoever works with us. It is a privilege we don't take lightly, and we want to make sure that your kid is happy with us, as happy as they would be if they were with you. And I cannot tell you the impact that it was. That there were people who had tears in their eyes. I mean, people came up and sobbed. But it's just that it was it was just so beautiful to see how much the people valued that. You know, and there were lots of byproducts as benefits. If you were to say really think about it, there were attrition challenges, this, that, and the other. Eventually, investing in people. So these three brands that we built, whether you're trying to solve a attrition problem, somebody says I'm getting 1.5 times. Paying that guy 2x to retain the person is not the solution. That is a sign that one of the three is broken. Leadership, talent, and culture. One of the three is broken. And chances are that if you really want to make a beginning, somebody had a question. Sanjay Daboya had a question that which one should be first, which one should you start with? Always, 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 always. It start with the leader. Because until you fix that, and by leader, I don't just mean the founder, but you got to sort of really look at the leadership team, whatever that might be. In my case, it's just two people. We have 6 people in the organization, but it's 2 people. And then because that determines the talent, and then that in turn determines the culture. So otherwise,
Yeah.
you will do things one off, you will not be able to sustain it. So sustenance is really about doing that.
Yeah. Thank you. Great answer, Abhijit. And we have a Somil Shah wanted to know what are the ways that culture can be promoted in COVID remote working times. This is especially for those that are joining the team now remotely who don't have the culture context from the colleagues during informal meetups. So it's a question for the presents we have.
Absolutely. Somil, that's a wonderful question. I just wrote about some of this in the newsletter that I do. I talked about my newsletter. Let me just add the address of that. You will find the detailed response.
Great,
You
Abhijit. I
can
think it's very useful even for all of us to take back that knowledge from this kind of thing. So this is the link which Abhijit has
Yeah,
shared, right?
abhijitbhaduri.substack.com. Just go there and add your email address, and every week you will get a fresh, it takes 3-4 minutes and it's visually explained. When you go there, you will also discover, when you add your email, you will get access to the previous archives. The last week I've talked about that. Let me just, nevertheless, since you asked a question, let me
Yeah.
address this. How do we build culture online, especially when the people have never met? It takes much more effort. It's really like this, that the culture is eventually a sense of comfort that you have. It has a sense of comfort, and it comes from multiple places. For example, culture comes from the way that I'm being managed. The first experience, did somebody care about me, when I joined, or am I left to be by myself? They figure it out and sort of, then it obviously means that nobody cares about me. So the ability for you to actually spend time onboarding, and onboarding is one of the most neglected aspects of human resources, that which is that onboarding means you not just tell the person the policies, you give them your mobile and laptop, make that available. But also, one of the most important pieces is that you are telling people how do people behave, because one of the most powerful definitions of culture is that culture is how people behave when no one is looking. Yeah. So think about it. It's like, if there is no traffic policeman in many of the countries I've seen, middle of the night, there is no policeman, there is nothing, there's a traffic light which just turned red, and the people are waiting patiently. There's nobody crossing the road, nothing is happening, and nothing would happen if they jumped. But that is, to me, the culture of the place. Yeah. So I think that's a good example to sort of look at it. So to spend more time mentoring that person, Apeksha has a good example that she talks about. Mentoring them is the right thing. Spending time to say that, how would you do if such a thing happened, if such a thing didn't happen? In many ways, the example is the kind of investment that you make in the children when they are young, when you are teaching them how to make choices. That what happens when I have a choice between telling a lie and telling the truth. If I tell the truth, I will flunk in the exam because I'm not prepared. But I can be dishonest and I can clear the exam and get good marks. What should I do? That situation is, a great example of how you should be onboarding. You are actually, as the kid is growing up, you're really, they are learning from you, they are watching what you do. So in the same way, the leaders actually are very powerful people in which they shape the company culture. How do they behave when somebody challenges their suggestion? Suppose the guy is saying something which is wrong, let's do this. Does the person have the humility to actually listen to somebody junior? Because this is one of the big pieces that I kind of, again, I'm sorry, I'm I've worked with companies right across. One of the things I think we need to do better is, our definition of respect is that you don't challenge the guy, and it's not correct. um, that the definition of respect cannot be, the definition of respect is I should be free to ask you that question, and you have to explain to me why you believe, and I will tell you why I believe otherwise, and then we come to a joint company. So yeah, as Ramamurthy said, that you teach your company core values: people first, no free lunch to the new employee. Yes, I mean that, teaching them the values is one part of it, but I think more importantly is, how do the role models really live the values? For instance, our India's sort of motto is Satyamev Jayate. Does it mean all of us tell the truth at all times? No, I don't necessarily. There's so many occasions when I think of when I have not told the truth. And so that having the values is one part, but creating simple behaviors that you can expect people to follow when there is a choice. So, for example, respect, when we talk about it, by the way, Jacob has put a very interesting aspect. You've talked about the word respect. If you go back and see the dictionary definition, periodically, if you just look at it, uh, the word respect actually comes from something simple. It means to see again, respect. Spect is to see. spectacles comes from the same word, respect. Somebody does something where you take a second look and say, wow, I mean, how does this person do it? That is respect. Yeah. Respect does not mean unquestioned obedience. That's not respect. A lot of times we kind of think of that as respect, but you see the person, one more time. For example, another word, I will just take half a second to give another definition, which you must look up, which is we say the person is not disciplined. Yeah. Discipline comes from the word disciple. It is the same root. So if discipline is a problem, the problem is not with the student. The problem is that the teacher is probably not explaining to the disciple in the right way. How do you make the person the right kind of a disciple? That's the right definition. Sorry, Ajay. I mean, you were saying something. I
No, no,
interrupted
no,
you.
Abhijit, this is all music for all of us, what you are saying, very apt. And you are earning a lot of respect from all of us, if I can say, from
Thank you.
the words which you have been using, a lot of take home value. And there's a question to you from Naren Burada. How do you make employees feel the ownership of what they do in the company? And there is a similar questions. There are two more, so I'm just repeating so that you can combine them together.
Sure.
How do you create dreamers within an established company, and
Ah,
how do you create managers to leaders? So they are all somehow together.
yeah, no. I mean, I think they're linked. I mean, this is quite incredible. I think it's a fantastic question. I must say, I didn't sort of quite anticipate that. How do you create dreamers within market shapers? Yeah. So if you sort of really go back, I talked about jumping the S curve. The S curve um, is where you are really experiencing rapid growth, and there is no need for you to really do anything different. But that is also the time when you need to really start actively, uh, building on your next dreamer, which is that. So therefore, what do organizations do? One of the things they do is like today, for example, in my book, I've talked about some examples of companies. They have tie-ups with SMEs. So um, one of the companies that I work with, what they do is they have an investment in some firms which are startups in artificial intelligence who are doing really cutting-edge work. So they do a collaborative venture with them. How does it work? The advantage is that the established player, or either the incumbent or the market shaper, they have the benefit of leapfrogging into that kind of technology. So they don't need to really start another AI cell and spend another 10 years before they really grow it. They get the benefit of the other firm, and they are able to grow it. The second piece to keep in mind is for the SME or the startup, for the dreamer, the advantage is that you get to have access to the larger company's clients, a much bigger client base. You get access to their brand, you get access to their leadership style. One of the most powerful things you should negotiate when you go for something like this is that tell them that you want to be able to not just not just their work technical collaboration, but I think what you should do is start using their resources for growing your own talent base, because many of these people, they have very, very well established segments to work with. Their leadership strategies are really well defined. For example, if you were to go back and work with any of these market shapers, tell them not just the tie-up is for the commercial part of it or go-to-market strategy, but also for the talent strategy. This is the biggest piece of uh, the money that you leave on the table. So that's something that you must really create.
Abhijit, just a 5-second thought on virtual platform. I want to say, if this would have been a physical platform, we all must be sitting at one place and listening to your presentation. And maybe
Yes.
you and me were talking on a stage. But this virtual platform has allowed us one more thing, that we are getting the live questions from the audience, and they themselves are discussing a very important topic on chat. So there's a huge value for everyone to attend these kind of shops virtually. Of course, the physical benefits are separately there, but there's a huge, I'm seeing excellent discussion is being happening between Jinal, Raghav, and Sumit and everybody else. So excellent discussion is going on related to what you are talking, and people are discussing this. This is exactly what we need to initiate a discussion and take back home some value. Thank you,
Oh,
Abhijit.
absolutely. I mean, and this would have never happened because in a physical setup, it would have disturbed. Imagine people are talking, it would have disturbed the flow out there on stage. But here, it is actually adding to the conversation that you and I are having. We are learning from what they are saying. It's triggering different questions. So
So
yes, it's a win.
absolutely. So Raghav has said, Raghav Mittal, core values can be around innovation, culture, customer centricity, internal external integrity, teamwork, and transparency. And and this is obviously these are very very good English words, and we all know that we have been always practicing that. But my question to Abhijit to you is on a very different note. There are sizes of companies, a 20 people team or a 200 people team, they all fall under SME, or maybe a 1,000 people team like me, we are also an SME. Now the question is, and the culture implementation could be entirely different if you are a 50 people team or a 500 people team, right?
Absolutely.
And obviously the touch from the leader to the last person gets distanced as the
Yeah,
time goes, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
the vision core depends on now the HR managers
yeah.
or the culture managers, if you can call them. Now, how does the leader really ensure that his vision, which was with 50 people, he was able to translate to the last man? How does it still happen to the 500 people team?
So I think that is so. Let's look at how do the larger companies do it. How do sort of so a couple of different things. One is I think the leader's involvement in on a continuous basis, not on day-to-day matters, but being able to inculcate the values. How do we sort of look at that? During the 7 years that I worked at Wipro, so we used to run, sort of skill building programs for our mid-level managers, our senior level managers, at all levels. It was actually done from the people managers group, which is the mid-level managers, all the way to the senior level managers. We used to run a whole bunch of these sessions. Wipro is a large organization, 175,000 employees. One of the pieces to keep in mind is during the 7 years that I worked, never once, never can I recall a time when Premji missed addressing the group, ever. No matter what happened, we would of course fix the calendar for the year way in advance. We would announce it to people way in advance because we had people coming in from all over the world. But what it would do is, some of those things, whether it was, questions of integrity and this and that, I mean, you continuously reinforce it. And those are some of the pieces which are very easy to do. I mean, today, now that we have all learned the value of these platforms, what prevents, and you don't have to have a really fancy expensive platform in your office, but one of the things, as I said, when you invest in work technology, one of the ways in which you can do it is actually, why not have short WhatsApp video calls with your leaders on a sustained basis, and then invite some of the others. Dedicate one part of the day, maybe once a week, depending on the size of your organization. Dedicate once a week where you take those questions from the people. Once a month, do a town hall where anybody can ask all the questions unfiltered, and if necessary they should be able to raise a question and tell you where something is going wrong. Because most of the times, as soon as that goes wrong, in the organization, that people are not able to voice their opinions, especially dissent. Harnessing dissent is a leadership skill. you know and one of the things I've talked about in my book Dreamers and Unicorns is that the role of the leader, I mean, today is not the flamboyant leader. You're really talking about a time where the leaders have to be people who are going to be people who can listen. So humility is one of the biggest, leadership traits that is emerging today. That's what the research talks about. The research is quoted in my book, but one of the things to keep in mind: two elements, humility and courage. Because humility means I'm able to listen to anyone, who can sort of teach me. Courage is to be able to tell that person I don't know. And it's sometimes very hard because when we perhaps feel a lot more comfortable telling our children that we don't know, if the kid says, oh, why don't you do this on Instagram and do a stories on Instagram. You have no problem saying I don't understand Instagram or stories. But when one of your employees tells you that why don't you do this, then we have a big problem and say, hey, look at this fellow, he barely knows anything about the company and he's already giving me advice. Don't do that. Some of the people who you have, the more you leverage them, and they will become your brand ambassadors. They will be the ones who come and say, I can tell you that this is a great place to work. And as far as culture building is concerned, your employees are your best brand ambassadors. Because think about it, you're the founder and you say, I have a fantastic company, my company is wonderful, it has wonderful people, great culture, this and that. Versus, let's say your peon says, it's a fantastic company, it has great culture, I'll give my life for this company. Who will you trust? The third person is always going to trust the person who is most junior down the line. And this is one of the principles. And by the way, no great place, no better place to learn this than being on social media, because on social media, it doesn't matter, what your designation is. People follow you if they really want to follow you.
Yeah.
So I think that's, so I found it an extremely, wonderful, educative experience to be on social media.
So we are at the last leg of our discussion, Abhijit. We have another 8-9 minutes, and I would encourage all the audience here to tell us one question which you would like him to answer for your company, and I will see if I can ask them in the number of questions I receive. But while you are sending the questions, I have a question for you out of your book, Abhijit.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
VUCA. You
Yeah.
use the word VUCA, if I'm pronouncing it correct.
Yes, VUCA.
Right. And it will be interesting to know about VUCA out of your book for all of us till I receive the questions from the audience.
Perfect. So VUCA is a term actually which is not a really new term which is used. It's a very old term, but I think it's an interesting one because it helps us to make sense of what we are seeing today. Volatility, V stands for volatility, which is suddenly a whole lot of things change and you have no time to think through and take a call. I mean, just for example, suddenly you say that, okay, there's going to be a lockdown and you have, a few hours to sort of respond to it. If you don't respond to that right away, and there's no time to think that, am I setting the wrong precedent? Is this right? How will this work? There's no time. So that is volatility. It's reduced the time that you have in order to take a call. So until your design principles are really well thought through, you will not be able to respond to volatility. Second is uncertainty. Uncertainty comes from the word that, we don't quite know when this thing is going to end. I mean, for example, a lot of people are saying, oh, now that, the vaccine has been developed, now, we'll be able to get back. So we are all done and dusted. It's not going to happen like that because logistically to get it to a country of 1.3 billion people is going to be a huge, huge, huge task. More importantly, it's not going to be the logistical challenge, but the challenge will be for trust. And one of the pieces that we have to think about is that, trust building, when worker and workplaces all changed so rapidly as it did, the volatility that happened, trust building becomes a very important leadership skill. Your people would turn back and say, no, I'm not going to come to the office at all. I will take the vaccine, but I will be at home. Will the people give the vaccine to their family members? Because my getting the vaccine alone is not sufficient because I might still have infected family members. So, and the vaccine, we don't yet know whether is it going to prevent, so it's going to make me safe, but is it going to prevent me from giving it to others? We don't know. So there are all these questions that will be debated time and again. Think of the number of fake pieces of information you get, how uncertain it makes you. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Get yourself tested. Then somebody says, well, the tests are useless. Then somebody says, no, you drink kara. So somebody says, no, you apply turmeric on your forehead. What should we do? So that's uncertainty. Complexity means in any time when you take a decision, you cannot just take a very simple one variable answer. When I was in school, we used to learn about quadratic equation, multiple variables. Yeah. So if you say, okay, if we give people, if the government gives people money, then that is what is going to solve the problem. It is a very, very complex scenario. For example, when we said migrants are not allowed to, stay in the city, or many people were shutting down the business, the migrants went back. That in turn creates a challenge of, they're going back to their home places and spreading the virus there in places where there's very little sort of medical support. It's a very complex decision. So I'm only talking about three or four decisions, but keep in mind, when you decide to run your business, it is also complex. Should you invest in technology? Should you invest in talent? Should you invest in the young people? Should you invest in the old people? Think about the complexity of, if you have limited supply of the vaccine, who should get it first? Older people, because they are vulnerable? Younger people, because they've got their life ahead of them? Should it be the medical people? Should it be the soldiers? Should it be soldiers who have served and are decorated? I mean, one could go on and on.
Yeah.
And, and ambiguity is that many variables, nobody has a very clear answer. There's fake news, there's real news. So the ambiguity that it creates is the VUCA world.
Yeah. Thank you, Abhijit. I thought this should excite a lot of people to go and buy Dreamers and Unicorns book and get some context out of it. And I have a question before we end, and this question is from Abhishek. Our organization employs both permanent and contractors.
Yeah.
So, though we run regular engagement activities for internal employees, but for contractor, it becomes a big challenge, especially when they work for our clients and remotely. What shall be your recommendation on this for engagement with the organization?
Super question. I think, one of the pieces to think about is how do you get, to build, think about your talent in a boundaryless ecosystem, which is that you cannot imagine running your business without the contract workers and all of that. Because, for example, let's take a real scenario. Let's say if you don't invest in your vendors becoming, having access to medical care and being able to do that, these people, as they are coming in and doing work, they are going to infect your workplace also. So no matter how you sanitize your home or your workplace, until the others are also there, this is a problem that cannot be solved by isolation. It is a problem that can only be solved through cooperation and collaboration. So I think it's a very, very interesting time that the previous models of competition are actually not going to be helpful, that you make a distinction that, okay, this person is outside, I don't care about them. So if our neighbors are not going to be healthy, it is going to be very difficult. And we have seen, that in countries where the neighboring countries are poor, what does it do? It leads to a massive influx of refugees coming in from all sides. So ultimately, you are going to have to pay for them. So it's in your interest to have a really strong neighbor, even though it sounds counterintuitive. But your ecosystem has to be strong for you to be able to thrive and grow from being a dreamer to a unicorn.
Thank you very much, Abhijit, for this wonderful, wonderful talk. It is amazing that we are continuously in a virtual way engaged with you for almost 2 hours of conversation without having any break. Even for natural breaks, people are stuck and listening to and not trying to leave anything out what they can get out of you. It's fantastic talk, Abhijit. Music to the ears to me. Powerful talk. Lot of learnings. Lot of things to take back home and implement in our own companies. I'm sure this is the similar situation for all of the audiences here. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you everyone for making this event a great start. Thank you, Abhijit.
Thank you so very much, Ajay. And I'm extremely grateful to NASCOM and all the people who worked with me to make this happen, to bring my book to all of you. It's a brand new book written for the post-COVID world. Do take a look at it. You'll find tons of examples, but more than the examples, there are lots of exercises. I really recommend try out those exercises seriously, because that in itself will give you a good starting point. And after that, if you want to connect with me, I'm absolutely available, as I said, on LinkedIn. You can find me, Abhijit Bhaduri, or on Twitter at Abhijit Bhaduri, or you can drop me an email, abhijitbhaduri@live.com. I look forward to hearing from you. At least I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so much. And if I can do anything for you, it'll be my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abhijit. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.